Hey Zwifters, I'm Simon Schofield and this is the Zwiftcast. The smart bike is Tacx leading the charge. Is Zwift getting more or less friendly? And are teams the answer? And smart versus dumb. Which trainer is right for you? Welcome to my companion de route, Nathan Guerra. Yo, dude.
Hey, Simon, how are you?
Pretty good, thank you. And the llama himself, Shane Miller. G'day, mate.
G'day, Simon. How's things?
Not too bad with me, thank you, although it's dark and cold here, and I've just seen on the video feed that it's light and beautiful in Australia, so I'll try and get over my jealousy.
For the first time, I'm coming to you from outside today. I'm in shorts and T-shirt. The sun's just setting. We've had a beautiful day riding. It's a magic place to be.
Oh, and that isn't any salt for the wound there. I mean, come on now.
I have to tell listeners, we did just do a bit of a level check and there were kookaburras in the background. I mean, can you get more Australian?
Only if a kangaroo jumps out and tackles me, as we saw on the internet the other day. So hopefully that doesn't happen. If it does, I'll get it on camera.
Well, chaps, where should we start? I tell you what, how about this? My regular riding buddies were ribbing me the other day about my first ride outside of the year, like when it was going to be, because obviously they needed to get the marching band and the dancing people booked. I did tell them it'd be quite soon, but I told them it might also be in Spain on a pro team stamping ground. The responses were less than generous, fellas, I have to tell you, and pretty much unbroadcastable. So we'll probably leave that one there. Nathan, when and where were you last out in the real world?
I think it was September. It was a while ago. September, late summer, early fall. I had just come back from the collarbone, so I was able to get out, and I was testing it out essentially and doing a vision cycling clinic with a bunch of riders that we put on at a local trail. But as far as all the training, it has been on Zwift since then, pretty much.
Yeah, that's probably pretty much the same for me. I remember last year, the first ride I went out, rather embarrassingly, I had a bit of an off. Now, I did hit a big pothole, and it did bang my hands off the bars. But I did wonder whether kind of 3 months of indoor riding there was a factor involved in that. What do you think, Shane?
That's an interesting one. Maybe. Because I've always said indoors will make you fit and strong, but outdoors you work on your skills. So sure, I reckon there'll be a bit of rust there in the system, but I think when you're back on your bike, it's just like riding a bike. You'll never forget.
Well, it ought to be, shouldn't it? I should have remembered that was when I was picking myself up off the ground and examining my slightly bent bike after that rather nasty incident, I have to say. But I recovered fairly quickly and was a lot more careful next time out. I suppose the question about riding outside is, as usual for you, Shane, it's turned upside down. It was really probably more, when was the last time you rode inside? And I think maybe a Volcano was involved.
Oh, for sure. I've been doing, as soon as the Volcano was out, I had to jump on and see what it was all about and see what the hot topic was, so to speak. Did a few hot laps of the Volcano in both directions, and it's a good 5-minute circuit, which is my kind of interval, so I don't mind it at all. But I did a pretzel 2 days ago. So I jumped on and did an old school pretzel, so 75 kilometres, and that was testing some beta firmware for a trainer. So, yeah, we're blessed with both options at the moment, indoors and out.
Nice. What do you think of the Volcano?
A bit too flat, but I know there's a gated road there that we're going to get some hills in. So it's super tough, really tough, because there's a few little bumps that change the resistance. And for me, it's always aiming at that 5-minute barrier. So for me, it's painful at the moment because I'm just trying to crack the 5-minute barrier.
Nathan, it's got the looks of being a good racing circuit. I've raced on it, but only using half of it. I've not actually used it as a kind of crit course. How's it looking for racing purposes?
Well, actually, while Shane was out the other day, we were chatting quite a bit on Discord while I was doing my 25-lap achievement. And during that 25-lap achievement, we had a lot of chitter and chatter going on about who was out there with us and kind of a little bit of competition during the rides to get some fast laps going. And that experience was really interesting, having people kind of always within sight, this continual course that's coming at you and you're really familiar with it over and over again, so you can get familiar with where to attack on it. So it definitely acts like a real crit course. I'm really excited about it. And I think it's a great course for racing so far.
Yeah, well, I like a circuit myself, and it's a good circuit, good racing circuit. Okay, let's race quickly through some other news stuff. And this was a really interesting one. Did you see the Zwifter who slipped through some crazy kind of time-space continuum or some gap in the warp and weft of the universe, and ended up riding completely alone on what was very obviously an uncompleted extension to the London route? Now, there have been rumours about extension to the London route for some little time, so that didn't take me too much by surprise, but the idea that this guy suddenly kind of found himself transported to a course that was clearly still being worked on. I mean, the mechanism for making that happen was I just can't get my head around it. I mean, I just don't understand how that could have happened. Shane, John Mayfield, the creator of the game, he does have a habit of teasing us, particularly when there's new features due to be released, and the way that information slips out on Zwift sometimes is kind of, it's not direct and obvious sometimes. Do you think this was one of John's tricks or just some weird accident?
I think it was just a glitch in the matrix. I don't think it was planned, or it was just simply by accident. And for me, it's fascinating. Coming from IT security, this is exactly what IT security is all about. It's the exception when things, exceptions to the rule that you don't actually plan for. So I'm guessing they didn't want anyone writing this. What we saw from the landscape, it was very sparse, not very populated with graphics. So it was off to the side. I loved it. I'm fascinated by this. It's a bit of a hack to the system. We don't know how it happened, but you can guarantee if we find out how it happened, we're all going to be doing it because we want to ride this new road. But I do like the rider then posted a ton of screenshots, posted the ride to Strava to validate that actually he did do the ride, and released all the information. I love that. That's great. The community, again, one step ahead of Zwift.
Yeah, I mean, that guy reacted really quickly, didn't he? I think I'd have been so shocked. I'm not sure I'd have remembered to take any screenshots, but he got like as much detail as he possibly could gather on it. Is there a parallel in the gaming world? I mean, does this ever happen in the gaming world that something clearly not ready slips out, Nathan?
Actually, this is extremely common. There's always bug fixes going out in the gaming world for things that aren't necessarily Easter eggs, but ways that the game can be manipulated. And I would be really surprised if this isn't repeatable. And I think that we might not have the populations, though, that the regular gaming world does, where if something like this pops up in a game that has a huge population, all of a sudden there's a whole forum somewhere on how exactly do you do this thing and how do you get there. And I think you might see some people trying to figure out exactly how this happened and replicate the circumstances. I have a feeling it is still out there somehow.
How about we try and arrange a secret race on the new course that we can't get to? And it's going to be a very, very exclusive club.
That would be an exclusive club. I mean, the thing is, if you can get back into it, sure as eggs are eggs, as my grandmother used to say, somebody is going to find a way of doing it. What it did reveal, of course, is the next big course development is definitely London. Although we know that there is probably a climb pending on the Volcano as well, but I mean that looked to be a fairly significant extension. Shane, would you have preferred to have seen Watopia extended or London extended? I mean, just treat that question in isolation. Let's pretend we don't know either of these extensions are coming. Where would you have focused the next big extension if it was your choice?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I think on London, because it lacks a bit of character. It has one sort of major hill, but it needs just a bit of mix-up. Watopia has lots of different mix-ups that I can choose for my free ride training. So yeah, London's a good choice.
I'd like to go to the top of the Volcano, and I think they might do that first. I don't know. I think that the Volcano is already developed enough, and that Otherworld did not look developed compared to what I've seen on the Volcano. So with the Volcano the way it is right now and seeing that road blocked off there every time you go by, it's a little bit of a teaser for everybody. So I'd like to see the Volcano. I like Watopia a lot, though. So I'm a little favoritism there, I think.
This is the Zwiftcast, the podcast for Zwifters.
Nathan, Zwift Community Live, which is a bit of a mouthful, I think we abbreviate it to ZCL. It's looking absolutely great. How's it going? Are most people watching live feeds or watching the reruns? Is there anything you can tell us about your stats? It's only been really up for the last couple of weeks. How are things with it?
It's been half and half for live versus watching it video on demand. And we're also in a lot of different places, which people don't realize just yet. They mainly see us, I think, on the Facebook, which is our main push right now, but we're also on Twitch, Beam, and our main VOD push will be on YouTube. Everything is high quality on YouTube for the video on demand, but definitely on Facebook is the main place. I was really impressed by the numbers right up front. I think within the first few days, we hit 50,000 views, which was pretty amazing. And some of the most popular stuff is not the racing, and that's one of the things we really want to highlight is that it's not just a racing channel. It is a showcasing of all things awesome in Zwift, the community, showcasing what you guys are doing out there in the community. And so one of the most popular segments is actually Life and Cycling with Mrs. Coach. Lindsay, my wife, is actually doing segments that are all about doing life and cycling at the same time. The ups and the downs, the pinnacles, the valleys, like how do you go through this? Has she come against the challenges as and especially women's cycling focus there, as well as doing it as a family, all the different things. I mean, we've been at this for 15 years and she's had this perspective as being a very high end athlete herself in women's cycling, racing against pros and Cat 1 level. So she brings a wide breadth to the show. And that's actually one of the most popular segments that is a lot of the comments say, this is very real talk. And then we also are getting some coaches in, it looks like, coming in to do workouts. We had Scotty Weiss, current TT and road race Masters World Champion, actually last night for the Wednesday Volcano ride or Wednesday Watopia ride that he leads as a group. So, I mean, we're highlighting all kinds of things, and it's taking off. People are jumping on. It seems like daily where people are noticing what's happening there. So we're having a lot of fun with it.
That's great. Well, that's really good to hear. Shall we break the news, chaps, that we are going to transfer the Zwiftcast brand, I think we should call it, which sounds ridiculously posh, but people know what I mean, from audio to also video, and we are actually going to have make an attempt to have a Zwiftcast live show on ZCL. We were thinking of maybe making it a kind of Q&A format so people could ask questions, which may mean, Shane, that the entire world asks you all their tech support questions related to Zwift. Now, could you cope?
They do anyway. It's all good. Yep, bring it on. Actually, the other day, and just on the Zwiftcast live stuff, the Zwift Community Live, I was just riding along and whilst I was doing the pretzel, and I jumped on the Discord channel. And I thought, because I've got low bandwidth again, Australia, and I just jumped onto this Discord channel, and Nathan and I were chatting away, and then he switches to the screen, to my screen riding, and then I was part of the show straight away. Then I actually had a friend. I'll dive into a little story here. I had a friend racing me up the hill, and I just backed off a little bit, and then I attacked him, and he tried to attack back. And this is all on Zwift Community Live. And then I'm commentating because I'm on the Discord channel. I beat him to the line, and he's like, "Oh, don't wait for me at the top." Oh, he didn't even know we were live streaming, but I got to contribute to that very, very easily. There were no technical hurdles for me to live feed things in. I was just riding along. Nathan had this screen of my Zwift screen up. I had the audio in. It was brilliant. It was really, really good. And we also rode along and just talked for a while. And somebody, I think, put on Twitter, that was amazing. They just happened to be listening in and watching the live stream. That was just like a talk show. So it was a bit of an unofficial test, I guess. Sorry, Simon, you weren't invited? No, only kidding. It was just a random occurrence. And it worked really well. So I think there's a great platform there for people to be able to chip in and have feedback and discussion rather than sort of the one way that we get at the moment with either the podcast or even my YouTube channel. So, and that's what Nathan's been doing forever. It's the two-sided conversation or multi-conversation that you have at once. It's going to be big. Can't wait.
I'm looking forward to taking part in that, actually. It should be good fun, that kind of whole interactive thing. Although I will only answer questions on matters of opinion. I'll leave the matters of fact, technical fact, to you, I think, Shane. Anyway, I was over in Holland visiting Tacx a few days ago, and we are going to get to Flux and Tacx's QC processes and all of that stuff later in this episode. But just first, I wanted you to take a listen to this. It's an excerpt from a much longer interview I did with the boss of Tacx, who is called Simon Tacx. That's because it's a family company. Listen to this. How far can smart trainers develop beyond what the Neo currently offers? Are we now in a position where the good will get slightly better and the best will stay more or less the same? Or do you think there's another big leap forward that could be taken?
In terms of technology, I think we pushed it quite to the boundary, but there are a few tricks we still have in mind to add to a future Neo product. But I think you covered it also a little bit in your last podcast, discussing a smart bike. We have a project like that in mind as well, and yeah, it might be something in the direction of the Neo, of course. We never sit still, so we're trying to launch a new product every year, and that's our aim. But difficult to say what's all up in our sleeve at the moment.
Okay, well, I think you know what's up in your sleeve at the moment, so
I know what it is.
I'm going to push you on that a bit. I mean, could the smart bike, for instance, look like the Neo at the back and have a bit of a framework on it? I mean, is that the sort of area that we might be talking about when we say smart bike? People can't visualise it, you see. I'm trying to visualise this thing.
Yeah, I completely understand that there is much curiosity about what is coming out next year. It's also a little bit a slippery slope on this one because I know other trainer companies are working on similar projects. If I say all the perks now, what we are, then okay. I give an advantage to our competitors.
I understand that. Okay, well, in that case, let me not ask you for details. Let me ask you then the straight up question. Are you working on the smart bike concept?
Well, you consider yourself a good journalist, I guess. But when you were running past our office, you saw things you probably wanted to see at this moment.
I did glimpse something out the corner of my eye, actually, but...
Yeah,
okay. I don't think I'm going to get any further on that, listeners. I honestly did try as hard as I possibly could on that one. But I think listeners are perhaps going to have to draw their own conclusions on that. What listeners weren't able to see was the body language and the glints in the eye, and the audio can't convey that. To me, that was pretty much confirmation that Tacx are working on a smart bike, and the starting point is probably the Neo. Shane, would that be your interpretation? I know you only just heard that short excerpt, but I'm sure you've listened to every word 2 or 3 times.
Not sure. I'll sit back and just monitor this one and work on hard fact and data when we see it, but
You're not convinced, are you? You see, I think that they're onto a head start because the Neo is already a very good-looking thing that you could imagine having in the house, not the garage or the basement. And it would be a good platform for a smart bike, would it not?
it would. It's their top end, but I mean, I've spoken about my opinion of smart bikes, and I'm not the market. I'm definitely not the market for a smart bike. So, but if the community really adopt these things, great. But I'm sitting back at the moment. I'm just peeping over the fence.
Nathan, this would be aimed at the fitness market, the in-home fitness market, and that is big. I mean, as you were just saying about Lindsay's piece, I would imagine a lot of the audience for that might be what we might call a fitness audience.
Yeah, definitely. We see a lot of people coming in with a lot of introductory questions to the world of cycling. And so definitely in the fitness market, I think pricing then, though, in the fitness market is a huge question when you're building a smart bike. So you're adding things onto the Neo, which is already a fairly expensive unit. You are correct. It is a good-looking unit, but it is a fairly high-end unit. So that's a concern right off the bat. But I think I'm going to go with you there, Simon, and say it sounds like they are already on this. And I think that the dollars are there coming in because of Zwift. We see this over and over again where the company is actually marketing directly alongside Zwift. That I saw a Wahoo ad the other day, and Zwift was the thing that was in the ad, actually, right alongside showing the unit itself. And so I think this is opening up a whole new segment where they're getting all these new sales, but they have a little bit extra R&D to work with and go, we can throw that at this and we'll be the first ones to market, and let's take a shot at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good analysis, actually. I mean, both for what Zwift has done for this market, and we're not going to hear it in this podcast, we'll hear it in the next episode, but there was a telling moment for me where we stood in the warehouse at Tacx, huge warehouse, and there were boxes and boxes and boxes of non-smart trainers, really tall piles. And then we moved down the warehouse a little bit, and the space that had been allocated to the Neos and the Fluxes, there was this sad little pile of about four trainers waiting for dispatch, because basically they just can't make these things fast enough. As fast as they make them, they sell them. And that has to be down not solely to Zwift, but account for that must be Zwift and the general popularity of indoor riding. And it's not until you actually physically see these things that you kind of fully begin to understand the impact. And there's nothing quite like an empty warehouse for bringing it home to you that these things really are flying off the shelves. Really, really, really interesting. Who else do you think's working on it, Shane? It can't be Tacx alone.
Stages already have a bike out there, but I never see anybody on them or talking about them. But not really a smart bike, I don't think. I mean, Wattbike have to be doing something, because the Wattbike platform, I think there's potential there for their market.
I mean, they have got the template, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, they've got the distribution already sort of globally anyway. So if they come out with a product, they plug it straight into that and away you go. So while I mightn't agree with them, and they're not my thing just yet until the next one comes out that's brilliant. So I think Stages are maybe doing something there. Wattbike should be doing something. If they're not, hey, Wattbike, time to start now.
I personally would be very, very, very surprised if Wahoo weren't working on something as well. But no doubt we'll find out.
I'm Simon Schofield. This is the Zwiftcast.
As we know, Zwift has been a big success, at least in part due to its social nature. But as it's grown, are some of the social aspects diminishing? By that, I mean things like texting in-game and the giving of ride-ons. Now, here's an interesting example from one Zwifter, a guy called Al Cluley. He says that in 20-odd miles of riding around London, with more than 2,500 riders on course, he received the grand total of 1 ride-on. He then did another session, which he used the hack to get into a non-scheduled day, and was riding round the London course. As a result of that, there were many fewer riders on. But in 60-odd miles there, with only 15 riders on the whole time he was on, he got 14 ride-ons. A crowded course feels like a big city where everybody ignores each other, and a small course or a restricted experience feels like a little village where everybody talks to each other. Is there any merit in this, Nathan, in this idea that Zwift has now got so big that actually we're not kind of talking to each other as much as we used to?
I would have to agree with that. The idea of being able to group would be outside of just the event module. And even event modules have gotten so big. I've had feedback from friends that have gotten in to Zwift, that I've gotten into Zwift and are riding, and they're like, yeah, it's really cool. But I mean, I join these events and then I'm just amongst this mass of people if it's of a really big group, and I can't really make sense of who's who. And I joined into the group because my buddies are in it and I can't find them. And so I think that the idea of grouping, creating a some sort of way to group together and go do this route or go do that route on the fly might be something that Zwift has in mind, maybe. But I think the idea of indoor cycling made social is probably something they're thinking about developing a little more on the social side of things. We did hear a little bit about voice chat coming down the line. I would wonder if that would also be coupled with that ability to group with other individuals in some sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, what I would call the casual social aspect seems to have diminished. Now, Shane, you are probably the world's worst person to ask for an opinion on this, because as was proved when I watched your Volcano ride, you only have to kind of put your nose into the software and you are showered with ride-ons. I mean, you are Mr. Popular. So I'm not sure how well placed you are to comment on this, but have you noticed it, talking to other people and other users, that it has kind of got, well, kind of less social, really?
Yeah, look, being on Zwift from the very, very early days, I've got a few followers, and I think people have started. I initially was put on probably notifications when I started riding, so I start riding and a shower of thumbs come down, which I love. It's kind of cool, but there's definitely no hiding for me when I want to do a workout. Everyone knows. Look, I think I see that more in chat. It used to be a lot of group chat, and again, it comes back to we like little tribes. But then when the tribe is massive, everyone just sort of shuts up and doesn't really say a lot. So I think I find it fascinating. I think psychologists need to start looking at Zwift and the groupings and the actions in large groups or small groups. There's probably a PhD in this, I'm sure.
Arguably the thing that is most successful about Zwift and has distinguished it from every other product that's been along is its social aspect. So I'm absolutely certain they're paying close attention to this and thinking what they can do about it. And I'm sure voice will be one of those things. But one of the things that spontaneously happened in the community, possibly to tackle this idea that big is impersonal, is the development of teams. And one team that's been particularly popular with racers just starting out is a team called TFC. So I thought it was about time we found out a little bit more about TFC.
Racing on Zwift need not be intimidating. One team, perhaps more than most, has set out to prove it. I caught up with one of the principals of Team TFC, Damon Mackay.
I'm kind of an early adopter, I guess, of Zwift. User 3000 or so from back in the beta days on Jarvis Island. I'm kind of one of the early members of Team TFC. So one of the kind of community-led teams with a specific focus, I guess, that we started off with, which is on category C and D riders in races. So a lot of the races are dominated by some of the faster riders. And we started out with a focus very much on the guys at kind of sub 3.2 watts per kilo, just starting racing and encouraging that adoption in the community. Obviously, the addition of iOS support has brought some more members into the group, and obviously we're also keeping an eye on Zwift riders and some of the other Facebook groups for guys that are trying the races and finding that they're well back in the Ds to start with, and wondering obviously how to make some progress.
And your flagship event, and where the name TFC comes from, I think, was the Friday Criterium, which was a race series, strangely enough, on a Friday.
It was indeed, yeah. So we spun out that race series, and again, that race series was originally open just to category C and D racers, and proved to be very popular. So we also had a kind of own point systems, a few things that Alan and the other guys have developed. We've just had a time trial series. We'll also be starting a new criterium series. So we've opened that up now to category A and B riders as well. As all the events on Zwift, the races have got much bigger with more people joining in.
It's just an index, really, isn't it, of how fast Zwift is growing and how its tentacles are kind of reaching, beyond the virtual world. And I think your example is a perfect one of that. I mean, you've started effectively a club in Zwift, which has mutated into real life. I mean, that's incredible.
It is amazing. Jeff Edwards has registered us with British Cycling, so our kit's been registered. There are one or two tweaks for that. I'm not sure if we're the first virtual team to cross the divide into the physical world, but it's certainly been a great thing. And obviously we saw a huge turnout from the team for the WBR, World Bicycle Relief Day. I think we were the second highest fundraiser behind the WR team itself. So, there's been a great team atmosphere. It's a very supportive environment. I think that's why people have stuck on and contributed and helped with everything from fat loss tips to equipment tips. It's been a great Facebook group and can be quite distracting, I must say.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, it's probably just worth reiterating, Damon, because a lot of new people coming onto Zwift and they see team and they think, oh, not for me, or I need to be invited, or there's some kind of special conditions, or they're all terrible elitists and fast riders and stuff. I mean, what are the conditions for joining TFC?
Well, effectively, I think you need to have done 1 or 2 races or done an FTP test at least. And then, Alan, myself, and the other admins, we've just kind of elected our first officers, I guess, to get a bit more formal about this because of the numbers involved. But an FTP test so we can judge exactly what category you're in, I think is the big thing. But if you haven't done that yet, that's fine. Do just reach out on the Facebook group to Team TFC, and we'll run you through kind of what's involved in signing up. As I say, we started out specialising in category D and C riders. There's a real beginners right through to about 3 watts a kilo, something of that order. We do have a number of B and A races as well now, and that has broadened through the Criterium series and other events that we've run. But as I say, it's a supportive group that's taken people through. I joined as 118 kilos and a very slow category D rider, and I'm moving up towards the top end of the C's now, sort of 12, 15 kilos lighter. So it's been a really supportive group, and we've also got some very dedicated racers as well. So there's a real mixture in there, but good bunch of guys. Doing an FTP test, it's kind of almost the first thing that many new Zwifters do. So I don't see that as any kind of barrier really to joining the team. And it's great to hear you're so inclusive. It's also great really just to salute you, I think, for everything that you've done to encourage racing in those lower cats, because people can be intimidated, but as I often say on the podcast, racing on Zwift is just the most enormous fun, and to see you guys encouraging it, or at least starting out encouraging it at the slightly lower end of the cats, was much appreciated by the community. So thank you for all the work you've done in that area. Yeah, we've had a lot of great events. So a lot of people have come up the ranks, which is fantastic to see. And as you say, more and more female members. So we're just looking at our first female-only event, and 1 or 2 more social rides as well. So we'll be broadening that out over the next month. So keep peeled. Excellent. Well done, Damon. Thanks for all your work. Well done on the weight loss, and lovely to talk to you on the podcast. You too. Lovely to speak to you, Simon, and keep up the good work. Thank you. Well, they do excellent work at TFC, as do all the teams on Zwift. Nathan, we'd be lost a bit, really, without teams, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think as far as the community coming together and people being able to identify with a group of people, it definitely is absolutely huge. And I think that's the main focus with teams, is that it's a group of people that you identify with, that you've hung out with, and you guys have this common bond in riding together. I think that's the main focus. And actually, TFC, I interact with those guys almost every day, actually. A few of their heads of state hang out in the channel every day, and they even have their own emote in the channel, actually, for people to cheer for their team in the Beam channel.
Shane, teams are just a way, really, of chunking down this enormous Zwift Facebook community now. I mean, we're now up to, I think, 26 or 27,000 members on Zwift Riders. I mean, that's kind of too big, isn't it, really?
Yeah, for sure. So we're all tribal, I guess. So everyone joins a little group and then goes off and fights other tribes together. I like it. It's very primitive. I think it's how we're programmed to operate, though.
Yeah. But the teams are generally a really good thing. And I'd encourage people to look out for a team as a way of kind of easing you into the Zwift world if you're new to it.
Ride on!
Okay, let's talk in detail about Tacx. A few days ago, I went to Holland, and this was for the second of my factory visits. I've already been to Elite, and at this stage, it's probably just worth stating the rules of engagement here so that listeners are completely clear. I paid all my own way, all my own expenses to get to Holland and stay there and spend time with Tacx. I do ride a Tacx Neo most of the time. I will probably say it's my favourite trainer out of all of them. But again, I have paid for that with my own money. So I think it is just, without making too big a deal of it, worth people being aware of those facts. So here's the first of my reports from Tacx.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tacx.
Well, here we are in Amsterdam Central Station on our way out to see Tacx. Now, the last time I saw Tacx, their tails were up.
Persuasion is required.
Back in August at Eurobike, the eagerly awaited new trainer, the Flux, was the talk of the show. But on a cold and foggy day in Amsterdam a few months on, the Flux story took a turn that Tacx certainly wouldn't have chosen. Today I'm expecting them to be just a little bit more on the back foot. We can't ignore the difficult launch of the Flux, and although Tacx has clawed back some ground recently, the company's QC process has been front of mind for consumers. So I think we'll start there. But let's get to the factory first. I've made the short trip from Amsterdam Central by fast, efficient, cheap train out to the town of Leiden, and from here it's just a couple of minutes to the suburb of Wassenaar, a prosperous little place which is where the Tacx factory is based. So I'm starting my factory tour of Tacx, and the most important thing is I've just met the company dog. The dog was called Steffi, a lovely little dog, and I'd just like to reassure listeners who are dog lovers that he wasn't wandering around on the factory floor, he was in the reception area. We'll come back to the factory because it's really interesting, full of robots and big on automation. But let's get straight into the QC department. We're focusing on this because regular listeners will know that a problem was found with the trainer after it got into the market. So a good place to start was with Martin Smits, who heads QC. Would you explain to us exactly what QC is, particularly for the Flux, because that's the thing that is kind of in the news, as it were, at the moment?
Yeah, now for every product we've got the same process. We assemble the product, and when it's ready, we test it 100%. So no product will leave the factory without that it's tested. Of course, we also listen to the noise it's making, but when it leaves the factory, it's quiet.
There were two problems with the Flux. One much more common than the other.
Both were issues we couldn't detect in the manufacturing process. So that was a problem, because otherwise we would have we wouldn't have let them out, of course.
How is it that those two problems could escape the QC process?
Of course, we designed it, and after you design it, you make prototypes, you test the prototypes, but the assembly process is different during development and during production. So they altered the way they assembled it, and that caused problems. Based on changes in the assembly process to speed up the process, and that was the problem.
And since the problems have come to light and you've investigated them and tracked them down, have you changed the QC process now for the Flux?
Yes, of course. After every unit, which comes back, we analyze it, and we count all the different issues, and then we analyze it and we improve the process. Sometimes it's we can improve the materials. Sometimes we can improve the molds. And sometimes we have to improve the assembly process.
Tacx also hit problems early in the production run with their flagship Neo trainer. These have now been solved. I guess what consumers will want to know is how these things get to the stage where they do get out into the market, going through your quality control processes.
The problem occurred in the field, and when it left the factory, it was okay. So you can do what you want in quality control, but you won't detect it. You really have got to adapt your processes, clean everything very well, and then it should be okay.
So I guess what you're saying, to some extent, is that the ultimate test is the marketplace.
Yeah, but we don't want to get problems into the market, of course. We are preventing always things like that, because when you want to train, you want to start it, and when you have to stop because your product isn't working, that's very annoying. So with every new product, of course, you can have some unexpected surprises.
Unexpected surprises, that's probably the best summary of what's gone on, and one which the boss of Tacx, Simon Tacx, repeated later. He simply called it bad luck. It's also important to put these problems into context. Tacx claim the Flux failure rate is under 2%. That figure's been corroborated by some unofficial research by owners on social media. And we must also acknowledge that social media does tend to amplify these failures. It's something companies have to deal with these days, and it affects the confidence of consumers. It's also worth mentioning that in keeping a real close eye on this problem, as I have been doing, Tacx has been seen to have provided first-class customer service to affected owners.
We are sure that every product which leaves the factory now is correct. I tested, we did some improvements, and I tested it up to 8,000 watts, so that's really incredible, and 100 kilometers an hour. So 8,000 watts was an acceleration, so it's a real sprint, and 2,000 watts continuously at 100 kilometers an hour, so a very extreme test.
And just to conclude on QC, it was interesting to see Tacx using the identical system I saw at Elite to run their accuracy tests on freshly assembled Neos and Fluxes. What we're seeing here is a pretty gigantic, hefty-looking motor, a very large crankshaft with a sensor in the middle of it. Martin's just turned it on and it's started to spin this Flux on the test bench. So Martin, presumably what you're doing is calibrating, is looking at the power that this torque sense is showing us and looking at the power that the Flux is reading.
So this is within the tolerances we expected. So you see now 49 over here and 51 over there. So that's rather accurate. And when you listen to the noises, you won't hear it. Then you got to check the power again.
So now we're putting a significantly bigger amount of power through the Flux. It's well over 300 watts now.
Yeah, now we've got to wait for some stability of the temperature, and then it will be within the range. And this one isn't calibrated yet, so we can do a self-calibration, spin-down calibration at the right temperature, and then it will be within the right range.
And this is the process that every Flux will go through.
That's correct. Yeah, so it must be within 5%. We know already that it's much narrower, but we won't publish it yet to the market because we've got to be sure that every unit is within that 5%.
And the Flux units I saw tested fell well within the 5% accuracy margin. I also saw a couple of Neos tested, and the results there were very impressive, with accuracy of around 0.25% against a professional power meter. But it is the Flux that's grabbed the headlines recently. Is the company now completely satisfied that the problems are solved and that replacements are being provided in a timely fashion where needed? I asked the boss, Simon Tacx.
I think the Flux is now okay. I must say that on social media, when you go to the Flux owners group, it's like a negative vibe, but it's also a small group of people. The number of people who bought a Flux, it's much greater. I think there are a lot of people in the market who are really happy with the Flux they have at the moment. So I don't think it has a long-term effect. It was like a bump in the road. We hope it's over. We think it's over. If there's anybody with a problem, we will help them as best as possible.
Shane, I am going to be upfront about this. And, when you spend time with people, it can be easy to be influenced, but also you do get a sense of how seriously a company are taking a problem when you see up close and personal exactly how it is that they're dealing with it. And, let's not be mealy-mouthed about this. The whole Flux thing has been, well, unfortunate is one word, a total nightmare might be another, not only for affected consumers and particularly for affected consumers, but also the company. My take on this was that the worst is now over, and I think they've possibly done as much as they are able to do to exchange faulty units quickly. It has blown up again in the past couple of days, that last day actually, that people are waiting too long for exchange units, or that Tacx are treating them in a slightly impersonal way. I mean, it's such a hard problem to solve this. You're a bit more hardline than me, I think, on this. Do you think more could be done still?
Look, from a customer support point of view, what I've seen in the forums, and their hats off to Tacx straight away, I've got to give them full credit for how they're dealing with this directly. They're doing the best they can in the situation. Yeah, look, I called Fluxgate early on, but I'm still not wearing a T-shirt saying don't buy a Flux just yet. So, look, it is unfortunate, but look, from what I've seen in the forums, they've been really, really good with customer support. They've been upfront. But what they're also dealing with now is because they've got distribution channels as well. You're dealing with shops or warehouses, and just it sort of muddies the waters with their dealing direct with customers and clients and people with issues. But from what I've seen as a bystander, because to be honest, my experience so far, I've blown up 2 units and I've sort of taken a back seat now. And again, I'm peering over the fence just to see what's going on. I'm quite active in the forums and I know what's going on, but I am sort of taking a back seat, watching how it's actually unfolding. What I'm thinking though is there's time bombs out there. It's like they've manufactured a ton of bullets, and these bullets may fire backwards. Like if that happened in any other industry, there'd be a full product recall. So the earlier model units, I still think they should be pulling them off the shelves and not selling them.
Product recall, I mean, that's generally in safety cases, isn't it? So if a product is going to harm you, it might be recalled. Personally, I think a recall would be over the top in this instance.
Actually, that is a very good point. Usually product recalls are around safety, but I'm worried about the safety of Tacx's consumer confidence. I want that to be restored. They're a great company, and as you've spent time with the guys, they're a great company. They're a great group of people. Just an unfortunate circumstance with the Flux.
Yeah. Well, that much is true. And, again, I think one of the really interesting things about this whole story is the role that social media has played in it, with you actually at the centre, to be honest, Shane, of the whole social media phenomenon around the Tacx Flux. And I wanted to talk to the company about this because in the days of kind of instant video uploads of affected machinery, it must be something that they have to consider. So again, I asked the company boss, Simon Tacx, how they view social media.
In this case, it was quite helpful actually, because the speed of getting information is much quicker than through the selling or distribution channel. It takes a few days for us to get back the Flux and analyze the product. We don't know what the problems are. We don't know if there even is a problem. The only information flow that goes really fast is our customer support, of course.
It's interesting to hear you say that actually you found parts of social media helpful because of the speed of response and the speed of reporting this particular problem. But do you live in fear of social media, or do you now just accept that it's a really vital part of marketing that you just absolutely have to find a way to live with and use to your advantage, and it's just now part of life?
In my perception, I think most people within the company are seeing social media more as a conversation directly with our customers in this case. So from our side, it's important to communicate. Like we're sitting here talking to each other, it would be quite awkward if I stopped saying anything, and would be a strange situation. So social media is just having a conversation directly with our customers, and that can help us. It could also ruin our day if we're doing it bad, but that's part of the deal. I think it's a healthy situation.
So, I mean, he obviously is going to put the best gloss on it as possible, and describing a constant catalogue of videoed complaints of company products kind of imploding. To describe that as a conversation is is admirably positive, but has he got a point? Is this the most direct means of communicating with the company? Is it genuinely helpful for a company for this kind of stuff to be plastered all over social media? Or, as I tend to think, because you only hear of the problems that happen on social media, you only hear of the worst cases on social media, that in fact it's a huge magnifying glass, and a huge distorting magnifying glass at that. Shane?
Yeah, this is very, very interesting. It is a conversation, but it is a public conversation, not just between two people, It can be between thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions, maybe even a few billion if we get that number in Zwift soon and everyone's following everyone else on social media. So that's the danger with this thing, because if somebody has a bad experience and they talk about it and people go, oh, that's fire, let's retweet that and let's talk about this, and that's the topic of discussion, it spreads so fast and the company have no control of that. And you get people with it's unfiltered. It is absolutely unfiltered. So you'll get people abusing and swearing. I mean, it's the standard trolls as well. It's just the open internet. It's a tough one for companies to deal with. And we see this not only in cycling, we see this across the board on Facebook and the Facebook comment section and things like that. It's a tough one for companies to deal with, but they need to adapt. They really do. There's no stopping it. And there's no, harnessing it or reining people in. All the company can do is provide excellent service, excellent level-headed feedback. And if their products are great, people will buy, people will be happy.
But this whole social media thing around product reviews and stuff, I mean, it is completely fascinating. I mean, I think it would make but even this one aspect of it, the Tacx Flux, would make an amazing case study for a business school or something. But Nathan, of course, I mean, the bike industry, I was going to say, as ever, it's not sometimes the most forward-looking of industries. The bike industry, is now dealing with social media, and the gaming industry has been dealing with that for decades. Does the bike industry have a lot to learn from gaming?
I think, that's a multi-leveled question. Yeah, because you have indie games and games that are just coming up and game production companies that are just coming up that want to do a really good release. And if they don't, it's gone. You're dead in the water. It's gone. You're gone forever. But if you have a great release and you gain a following and this community around it, then everything changes and you can start having a conversation with your community. You can start having live streamers do live streams and create a community hub around your game. And, so I mean, there's this, but it's kind of like that initial launch is really, really important. If something goes wrong, immediately they're on Twitter, bam, hitting it up like, yeah, we know this server's down and people understand and there might be a little rage here and there or whatever. But the reality is that the game is already made it and they're having an active conversation with their community. And we're actually seeing this with Zwift. Zwift has immediately picked up on this and having active conversations with their users, being a game that isn't going to be the size of any Blizzard game, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, or anything like that. Those guys don't need to have that active conversation, but we are seeing this in the Zwift community where there is this active feedback continually going on within the social media realms now. And I think that's a really good thing for Zwift to take an approach like that in this gaming realm.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge subject. I think probably the thing that's most of interest to Zwifters, because we're all part of this community, is in fact that word community, and a community has sprung up around the difficulties that Tacx have had with one particular trainer. It's fascinating to observe. And then, of course, that community needs to be managed, and the opinion of that community then starts to count in the wider universe. Really, 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 really interesting stuff. All right, let's move on. We're talking a lot about trainers this episode, but that's good because we love our trainers as Zwifters. So take a listen to this.
And I'm just about to talk to Chad McNeese. Hi, Chad.
Howdy.
And the reason Chad's on is because he's got a more interesting trainer journey than most, with a more interesting conclusion and outcome. Let's start in pre-Zwift days. What were you on?
I started off with just rollers, essentially, and riding by time and the perceived effort, watching a variety of videos on there that say ride to 7, ride to 8, that type of thing. Eventually, I upgraded to a Kurt Kinetic road machine that allowed me to have more resistance than the rollers had. Was also a stable platform, so doing things like harder effort, sprinting, and those types of things were a little easier instead of trying to maintain balance while you're kind of in the red on the rollers.
So Zwift came along and, like lots of people, you decided to change equipment. Where did you go?
Just before I got onto Zwift, I had found a good deal on a PowerTap Hub wheel set and kind of knew that I wanted to focus my training a little better. So I decided to go the route of adding a power meter to the system.
So you entered the Zwift universe with a power meter and basically a dumb trainer. I mean, the Kurt Kinetic, people love it. It's a great trainer, but it's still a dumb trainer. And again, like lots of people, you were tempted by the kind of glittering jewels of the smart trainers. So you, as lots of people do, you upgraded again. Where did you go next?
So from the Kurt Kinetic, I got a Cyclops Powerbeam Pro. So it's also a wheel-on type trainer, same basic arrangement as the Kurt. So it was very easy to transition to that. And then immediately got to reap some of the benefits of just the fact that in Zwift, you get the simulation of the hills. So the first time you roll into a hill, it's a pretty kind of almost a small epiphany, really. You just feel that resistance feedback. And if it's on a steep enough hill, you realize you have to shift. And it just takes that paradigm into another direction compared to inside riding prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great description. And a lot of people, particularly those who work in kind of bike shops or who demo the products with a smart trainer, will be very familiar with that. It's that kind of dawning on people's faces and in their legs that when it starts going uphill in Zwift, it feels like it's going uphill on the smart trainer. Now, lots and lots of people would kind of think you'd reached the sort of pinnacle of setup there. You've got a really good way of measuring power. You've got a really sturdy trainer which changes resistance according to terrain. But it didn't end there for you, did it? Where did you go next?
So did the same route as everybody else, pretty much doing a mix of training, racing, and group rides on Zwift. And at certain points, the racing aspect of it really got interesting because as you experience races against other people who are on dumb trainers, the resistance dropping off when you reach the crest of a hill and having to really accelerate hard would lead to gaps. So from a racing perspective, I started experimenting with the trainer difficulty within there and found out that most people slide it down to a very low percentage, if not zero, which then takes a very expensive smart trainer and makes it a very dumb trainer. So what I decided to do, just based on the fact that lowering that percentage went down, and I went, well, shoot, why am I doing this on a smart trainer with no setting on it? So I switched back to my Kurt Kinetic and just wanted to see what it was like removing that simulation aspect from it and just go to that trainer. So I did that for approximately 2 months and did my basic schedule where I was training, doing casual group rides as well as racing, and did all those essentially traveling back to the Kurt Kinetic dumb trainer.
So you've gone from smart to dumb. I mean, that for many Zwifters is kind of counterintuitive, but you obviously figure it's right for you. Why?
So I am primarily training indoors for performance outdoors, and it's not like I'm a high-class racer or anything, but I just want to better myself every year, especially against all my riding friends and groups that I hang out with in my area. So it's a matter of trying to improve my performance, and the power meter is a key aspect of that for me. But the smart trainer in Zwift is really cool and has that neat feedback to it. But when you start focusing more on the training and especially even in the racing aspect of trying to stay competitive, it almost seems like a minor detriment compared to a dumb trainer and being in direct control of the resistance throughout the entire process.
Really? Well, you find the shifting according to terrain just distracting or annoying or?
It's not annoying or anything, but it's more intuitive, I guess, because you're doing the direct thing just like you would be outside. But inside, when I'm in control on the dumb trainer, it just seems like I can really fine tune the resistance because, if I want to go harder, I just simply grab one gear. If I really want to jump on it, I'll sweep up to the big ring if I'm not already there. So, and it's a more immediate change instead of waiting for the resistance in the simulation to feed back and give me that resistance so that I can ramp up the power. So it's almost like there's a little bit of an extra delay when you're on simulation mode at a high percentage anyway.
So what would you say to Zwifters, and there's lots of them, who are kind of lusting after a smart trainer, but perhaps balking because, these things aren't cheap? I mean, is there a really strong argument in your view for staying dumb?
I think it depends on your focus. I see it as kind of two schools that people may find themselves in. One more like myself, possibly really focusing on the training and racing aspect and trying to improve as much as you can there. And for that purpose, I think a dumb trainer and a power meter is a great combination. For someone who's jumping into Zwift and maybe dreads indoor riding and is looking for any type of thing on top of Zwift to help improve that experience, I think a smart trainer is a very good choice.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. We love talking about kit and equipment on the Zwiftcast, and it's an obsession that many Zwifters share. But to hear somebody kind of advocating with good, strong evidence, I have to say, that the cheaper route, or route, as I should perhaps say from our American friends, the cheaper direction, that's a really interesting thing to hear. And particularly, as I say, given that you've kind of got the evidence to back it up.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's firm evidence per se. I really took this from kind of a casual perspective. When I thought about the idea, my goal was, well, if somebody new was coming into this and they really didn't know anything about it, how could they decide better? And there's a lot of really good smart trainer versus power meter threads and articles written out there. And I'd suggest if anybody's interested, they should look at those. But I wanted to try and boil it down to just a quick summary. And I think it really depends on a person's focus. If you're racing and training, I think a power meter coupled with a dumb is great. If you're looking to get the most out of Zwift, I think a smart trainer makes a lot of sense.
Brilliant summary, Chad. A pleasure to speak to you, and thank you very much. I'm sure you'll have enlightened a lot of people.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Nathan, I think, I'm not absolutely sure about this, I think you train dumb, don't you?
Yeah, as a coach, I like to say that I train dumb. I'm a very dumb trainer.
Yeah, that was a rather unfortunate phrase. You train on a dumb turbo, I should have said.
So not always. It depends on what the day requires. I do have multiple units here, and if I'm doing force workouts, I go directly to a mountain and I put that on 100%, and I grind that gear up that climb at the wattage I'm looking for. It's very beneficial for putting the force that is needed into the pedals on climbs to have a smart trainer when it comes from a training perspective. At the same time, I get the feeling from a dumb trainer, specifically one that has a building resistance the more you put into it, so like a magneto or something along those lines, where the harder you go, the more it pushes back at you, that you get this more real road feel that I experience actually, where if I'm going up and down hills, I'm able to shift enough on a road situation to continually have my watts fairly consistent and push through. And I actually feel like I get more of that feel on something like a mag trainer. And also he had some great points in there about racing. I don't feel like the responses in the racing are quick enough for what I would like, and also the estimations on the wattages are not quite accurate enough for my likings when it comes to just straight using a smart trainer. I would definitely want to have something that is a power meter matched with a smart trainer if I'm going to be doing both, so that I get those wattage responses very quickly like you would from a torque based direct power meter source. So, and sounding like his setup being the power tap in the hub, it's really difficult for him to do that as he's not able to actually he's got the wheel on situation, but still the dropout is real, that's for sure.
Shane, the reason I found this interesting was, because most Zwifters, I say most Zwifters, huge generalization, many Zwifters who haven't got a smart trainer will be thinking a smart trainer is the bee's knees and they've got to have one, and they may feel a bit left out perhaps if they don't have one. But I thought it was really interesting to hear from Chad that, the Zwift experience, whilst it can be enhanced by a smart trainer, it's not entirely dependent upon one.
Yeah, very interesting. Look, I own more smart trainers than is healthy to own smart trainers, but I still love my Le Monde. I actually own two of those as well. So, and I'll be keeping the Le Monde. I'm on the Le Monde doing time trial efforts just because it's quite simple. And I feel the old school way, again, this is me showing my age, the old school way is always better. I always go back to the basics and back to what's worked for me in the past. And that is on a dumb trainer. So surprise, surprise is there.
Yeah. Well, interesting to hear Chad, who's obviously a thoughtful chap and a very experienced Zwifter, come to the conclusion that he did. Okay, well, that's another podcast wrapped up, fellas. Shane, you've got the temerity, it being an Australian summer, to be out riding hills and chasing pros. Disgraceful behaviour.
Yeah, well, there's a guy called Chris Froome who rode past in a race today, Esteban Chavez. We had a few pros ride past because it's the Herald Sun Tour. So they raced up a mountain here called Falls Creek today, which was a 30-kilometre climb, won by Damien Howson by Orica Green Edge, one of the workhorses for Esteban Chavez. So it's good to see one of the workhorses and a local Aussie get the win, and that should tie the tour up, even though it's only stage one. So we shall see.
Excellent. Anything good coming up on YouTube from you shortly?
Oh, look, speaking of the Le Mans, yes, I did a video on the Le Mans this week and how responsive and how accurate the power curve was from Z-Power on the Le Mans trainer. Again, 2 thumbs up there, but not quite all the thumbs up all the way. So watch the video to find out why. And also today I released a video on, we did some Strava insights on what head units people are using in certain events. Really, really interesting stats. And if you're interested in the iPhone versus Android wars, I've got some numbers you'll want to see.
Nathan, any good highlights coming up on ZCL? I have to say, it's quite once you tune into ZCL and start it running, it's quite hard to leave it, actually. It's quite compulsive viewing. You're doing a good job on that.
Yeah, the next things coming up would then be, at least in the next couple of days here, I'm actually in 8 minutes, I'm doing the Kiss Down Under race. So we are continuing to serve Australia and all the boys and girls down there, which is exciting.
It's the center of the world.
Yeah, what's that? Say that one more time, Shane.
It's the center of the world. Everything's focused around Australia in the summertime. It's beautiful. But you're covering races from the other side of the world. This is great.
We're all just trying to get there right now somehow. This is what we're trying to do, is like live through you vicariously through Zwift somehow. But anyway, yeah. So and then I think we do have an event coming up with Cannondale Dropic with you, Simon. So we're going to be broadcasting that. I hear there may be some Tour of California stuff coming up as well that we're going to be doing with maybe some special guests being highlighted. So there's a lot coming down the line that we're super excited about.
Now, listen, I know you literally got to go because you're commentating on a race, but just one quick question. I mean, you're really busy. I know how long all this stuff takes. Have you got time to ride your bike?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I rode 3 hours today. I rode 3 hours with Shane the other day. I mean, we just fit it in where because the way I've set up my computers is I ride and I have the keyboard in front of me. My keyboard is my handlebars, and I get a lot of work done while on the bike, actually. If my keyboard was not in front of me while on the bike, that would not happen.
Zone 2 emails.
Exactly.
Well, listen, I know you've got to go commentate on the race, so it's a quick goodbye, boys. Thank you very, very, very much indeed. As usual, really good to hear from both of you. Watch out for the Kookaburras, Shane. I'm sure the race coming up will be exciting. Thanks very much indeed, boys, and talk to you next time.
Thank you very much,
Cheers.
Simon, and the listeners. See you soon.
That's it, podcast fans. It just remains for me to say thanks very much to Zwift for their continuing support of the cast, and to remind you that ZHQ has no influence on what we say. Ride on, Zwifters.